So, Your Excellency, Minister Pangestu, thank you very, very much for the honor you have given our institute by coming here today for your keynote address. We'd love to ask you a few questions about cultural diplomacy and also your position as Minister of the Creative Economy. First question that I'd like to ask, what role does cultural diplomacy have in overcoming challenges that arise in multicultural trade negotiations?
I think it plays a lot of role because soft power, when you are in hard negotiations, oftentimes soft power does help. And the fact that you take ASEAN as an example, which is an organization that's been around for a long time, we tend to have a very collegial approach just because there's a lot of cultural similarity between us. And we do many things together, including cultural events and the fact that there's a lot of similarity in culture. So I think cultural diplomacy, where you are learning about each other, whether it's through cooperation in culture, arts, even my new portfolio, creative economy, collaboration between film, collaboration between music, that does so much for increasing the understanding between any two countries or group of countries that often, I believe, does pave the way for better understanding and therefore a better environment, if you like, when you're actually doing the hard more economic or political negotiations.
So not really in a multilateral as well as a bilateral way.
Yeah.
I would agree. Now I have another question linked to that. Does cultural diplomacy have a role in helping to enforce agreements that have been passed but not yet put into practice?
That's a bit more difficult because at the end of the day, what you want to have in a multilateral agreement, there are always agreement and commitments and sanctions, right? If you don't fulfill a certain type of agreement. But I do think what cultural diplomacy can help is what we have found in Asia, I don't know whether it translates to other regions, is that when you have a very difficult situation, oftentimes having an honest broker in between can help. I'll give you an example between South Korea and North Korea, for instance. During the really heated discussions on the North Korean peninsula, Indonesia as the chair of ASEAN, we played like an honest broker role. All we did was just to get them to sit together. And it helped to reduce the temperature of the tension and the discussion. We don't do anything except just allow them, let's have lunch together or let's have dinner together, and then allow them to sit next to each other. You are not negotiating, you are not talking about anything, but you're just sitting next to each other.
It can be very important, I think, in particular the human component, which sometimes is left out of the negotiations.
Yes.
So that's fascinating. Another very different question. We, over the past few days, had many different countries speaking to us, really from Africa, Middle East, around the world. And one of the big issues that seems to keep coming back that's really blocking also cultural diplomacy and sometimes other forms of diplomacy is corruption. In your opinion, why is corruption a serious problem in many countries? And what do you think needs to happen to address the issue of corruption?
I think corruption, we as a government, when we came in 2004, we had a very, very strong commitment and mandate to eliminate corruption. But of course, that is a process. You have to do both, I think. You have to ensure that you have the independent courts, you have the laws and regulations that allow you to apprehend corruption and make sure you go through the process of investigation and meting out the punishment. And we have done that. There are former ministers, former parliamentarians, business people, hundreds of them now who have gone through this. But at the same time, you have to address it at the root. And at the root, this is a bit more difficult. One of the big issues for us is bureaucratic reform. And along with that goes remuneration. So better remuneration for the public servants. And then creating policies, institutions, and systems that do not allow for abuse of power. Okay, so transparency, clear regulations. If you apply for a license, it should cost this much, this many days. And then have a kind of a monitoring scrutiny process throughout that.
Good, excellent. I'd like to turn it to my colleague Ariane. I'd also like to ask a few questions.
Sorry if I messed up the name. Minister Pangestu?
Yes, correct.
I'd like to ask a question regarding the environment. Deforestation and environmental degradation is a serious problem in Indonesia. In 2010, a deal was signed between Norway and Indonesia in order to help this and also to curb the problem and reduce corruption associated with it. What roles do you see corporate social responsibility and cultural diplomacy in implementing these agreements?
Great role. I've been through this in the process, and it took us some time actually to convince the companies involved that this is actually in the longer term, in their greatest interest to be able to be part of the process instead of trying to fight it. And what is important is not just the actual palm oil producers or those who are using the forest land or the peat land, but also the buyers, the Unilevers or the Cargills of the world, who are the buyers of palm oil. They're also under equal pressure from consumers not to buy palm oil from deforested land, illegally deforested land. So what we have come up with is actually not just the moratorium with Norway on further deforestation or using of peatland, but we've also come up with a scheme where the buyers of the palm oil and the sellers of the palm oil come to an agreement. We, from now on, we are for producing sustainable palm oil. What does that mean? Yeah, and then they actually hire a third party to monitor, and come up with an action plan and a program. And I think this is the best of all worlds, that companies commit to sustainable production, and it is done in a way which is transparent, so there's no accusation. What had happened was there were NGOs that accused the producers, saying, "Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that," but it's in a way a little bit hearsay. Let's have it all out. Let's have an independent third party do the scientific study, do the monitoring and evaluation, and then everybody's clear on what needs to be done. And if there are mistakes that have been made, okay, we as a government, if they violated regulations, then they will be punished, and they should also be in a position to say, okay, we now are going forward. We have an action plan, and this is what we're going to do. So that's our approach.
Final question then.
Okay, and a related question. What roles and responsibilities does the private sector have when it comes to cultural diplomacy? Should they include cultural diplomacy projects in their CSR departments, and why?
Companies? Are you talking about
corporations?
Corporations?
And corporate social responsibility.
Yes, definitely. I'm trying to change the way corporates see corporate social responsibility. I'm very I'm very much of a believer of a different word, a different terminology rather than corporate social responsibility. It's corporate shared value. What's the difference? Corporate social responsibility is if a company feels, okay, I've got a lot of profit now, I want to help the community. Okay, I'm going to give $10 million to build a school, $5 million to build a hospital, and I feel good as a company. That's kind of an extreme exaggeration of corporate social responsibility. What's the difference with that and community shared value? Community shared value means I help the community or the suppliers who are dealing with me. A lot of them are small micro enterprises. But for instance, take Nestle as an example. They need milk from milk cooperatives. They'd help to develop the milk cooperatives. The milk cooperatives develop, but Nestle also develops because they're getting good quality milk for what they need for their production, and so on. So I believe, and they can also teach them to do it in an environmentally sustainable way, in a socially sustainable way. So this is actually, I think, the new wave of corporate social responsibility, which is not just, just helping out the community around them, but actually involving the community in a shared value of the company growing together with the community. And I think that's a more sustainable model for corporate social responsibility.
One final question, if it's okay. This has to do a little bit with history, so just out of curiosity. Following the removal of President Suharto, how has the government moved towards reconciliation following the event of the overthrow of President Sukarno in the 60s?
Suharto or Sukarno?
Both.
Both.
Well, Suharto overthrew Sukarno, and he was in power for a very long time, as far as I know.
In our system, whenever there's a changeover like that, there's no witch hunt, if you like, if that's a correct word for it. Like Sukarno, he was just put under house arrest, and he died peacefully because he was ill, and his family lived normally. And Suharto, the same thing. He was never put under any house arrest, and people still, we still hold respect for him. And there was really no persecution undertaken to any of this.
Yes, but with the murder, so over 500,000 people were said to have been killed during the purges, the 1965-66 killings. So I'm wondering if there's been any reconciliation.
For that one, for that period, that was a communist coup,
Yes.
and all those involved in the coup, there was justice done. The masterminds, if you like, that was all gone through a process. And I would say that because there was a very strong anti-Chinese element because of the link to China and the communist coup takeover. I would say it did take some time to, if you like, remove the discrimination vis-a-vis Chinese minority.
Yes.
But I myself, as a Chinese minority, I can say that through a process, especially in the last 10 years, starting with our first democratically, not elected, but in the first, after Habibie was the first president under the new democracy in 1999. Then we had President Abdurrahman Wahid. He was the one who basically eliminated all the discrimination against minorities, including Chinese. Chinese characters were banned up to then. Then he said no more, allow Chinese characters, allow Chinese to be taught in schools. And then under Megawati, they introduced an anti-discrimination law against all minorities, not just Chinese. 2006, we passed a new citizenship law, which again removed all discrimination against Chinese minority. And now we have cabinet minister of Chinese minority. We have governors who are of Chinese minority. So if you talk about that kind of period in history, that's kind of where we are now. And we can celebrate Chinese New Year.
So it's fascinating. I really think the future of cultural diplomacy also lies in the field of reconciliation. I think there's a lot that also cultural diplomacy can do in that field. So, so thank you very much for sharing that example, and we very much look forward to your lecture. So thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.